Welcome back to the Night Sky Knitting channel. My name is Rachel. I'm a knitter based in Ottawa, Canada, and today we are filming a very special episode, which is every garment I knit for myself in my first year of knitting / a wildly late 2021 garment knitting recap, because almost all of these were finished in the year 2021. Haven't finished a garment for myself since. And so kind of functions as both. So normally on this channel I do knitting podcasts, the occasional seasonal knitting inspiration and plans, and the occasional styling video, and I'm hoping to soon branch out into project vlogs for specific knitting projects. But today we are doing my first year of knitting garment recap because I love these kinds of videos so much. I always enjoy the end of the year when everybody posts them. And it was actually through one of these videos, specifically Cat of Heather and Hops' first year of sweaters video that kind of introduced me to the world of knitting podcasts. I haven't looked back since. So this video is about a month overdue because I actually started knitting for real in early mid-February 2021, and now it's March. But for a whole barrage of reasons I was not able to film a month ago, and so we're doing this now, which actually ended up working out quite well because I also just hit 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube, which is wild. That was like my reach goal. I was thinking I'd maybe do this for a couple years and then get there. However, there's been a flood of new subscribers in the past month or so, couple months, and so I want to say thank you all for being here and for joining me. And so this can kind of double as like a fun milestone celebration for that goal. However, there will also be further celebrations going on, so it'll be in the next podcast episode. It's fine. So all yarns and patterns will be linked down below, and yeah, I feel like that's everything I should say. Another important thing to mention before we really get started is that I have a 34-inch / 86 centimeter bust, and so everything I knit, that's my size, if that helps, because I really usually find that information very helpful when trying to figure out what garments will look like on my body, or if the body I'm seeing is similar to mine, or blah 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 blah. So that's the size I'm knitting for. Okay, so I have 11 garments that I knit in my first year of knitting, I think, if I counted correctly. They're all on a pile on the floor. Yeah, so some important context as to how I started knitting. Many times in the past, other people have tried to teach me how to knit right-handed because I asked, or because there was like a workshop or something, and like a really casual one. And I've always, or for a very long time, really wanted to learn how to knit. I thought it was so cool. I was so impressed by the things that people could make, and it seemed like a really great practice. And there were so many things about knitting that appealed to me. However, I'm left-handed, and I do technically know how to knit right-handed. When I knit right-handed, I am a thrower. I knit English style, but it just kind of never really clicked fully in my brain. I knit a scarf for my brother that he never received, even though it became like almost 6 feet long. I don't know, 4 feet long or something. It's mostly been frogged, but I've kept a little piece of it as a first knitting item memento. And I knit a little headband for my friend, and both of those were knit all in garter stitch and right-handed. And then I switched to crochet, and I learned how to crochet left-handed because, it's not as difficult to kind of switch between the two. There were a bunch of tutorials online, and that really clicked quite easily. And so when I wanted to take up knitting again, it felt more natural to learn or relearn how to knit continental as a lefty, because then I would be tensioning my yarn and holding it the same way as I do with crochet, which is, as we all know, learning how to tension your yarn at the beginning is kind of a big hurdle. You have to find what feels natural to you, and it affects tension and so many different things, so it just kind of made sense to carry that on from crochet. And then I relearned how to knit as a lefty, and I have not looked back. So some context as to, how I came into knitting and how I found knitting, and maybe a little bit why it stuck with me so much, is mid-2020 I was diagnosed with and treated for cancer, and I'm in remission now and hopefully will stay that way forever. knock wood, don't want to jinx that. And I had a lot of time on my hands, and recovering from being sick for so long, and then also the treatment that was needed to make me better again, took a long time, took a lot out of me, and there was a lot of things I had to renegotiate with myself. And knitting was very useful in taking my mind off things and helping me kind of renegotiate my relationship with my body and my brain, as a bunch of things kind of came out of the wash differently after cancer and after chemo. And that's also part of the reason, actually no, it is the reason why you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of garments for your first year of knitting, and wow, you must have a lot of free time on your hands if you were able to do all these things, especially considering the amount of times I frogged entire garments. Yeah, I did have a lot of time on my hands, that's why. So that's kind of all I really want to say on that. Not because it's a secret, I've talked about being sick before on my channel, but it is something that still makes me feel very vulnerable, and not really something I want to go in depth on the internet at this point in time. But that's, so much of what kept me occupied and helped me was knitting, not everything. And let's get into it with that little sad little detour out of the way. So, knitting. First garment I knit myself that still exists to this day is a Jessie Maed Summer Secret Crop, the ribbed one. I never remember. I talk about so many videos on my channel. I'm like, oh, it's one of the 2 free Jessie Maed. Oh, it's this one. I knit this. It's kind of crumpled because it's been in a pile on the floor. Because I tried to film this yesterday and the lighting was bad. I knit this in the Hobbii or Hobbii Cotton Kings worsted yarn. I think it's a light worsted. It's 100% cotton, and I did it in this lilac color. And I think that this is an amazing first garment project for beginners. I don't think you need to know a lot to be able to do it. Just casting on in the round, knits and purls. And the only tricky part is the sleeves, but Jessie Maed has a video for it. This is a free pattern. It can be worked with a bunch of different yarns. You don't need a lot. You get that satisfaction of finishing a project relatively quickly. And I recommend this to a lot of people as a good beginner project. I've knit so many of these at this point. I think I've knit like maybe 5, maybe 4. One for myself and then some for friends and family. I really enjoy knitting them. I think they're a great, enjoyable project. I knit mine with the intention of it being a nice summer garment and then like something I could wear as a layering piece in the winter underneath heavier garments as a warmer layer of support. However, I didn't know very much about yarn fibers and what I liked to wear and the practicality of these things, and so this is a great summer top. It's thick, which means I don't always want to reach for it in the summer because it's worsted, but then it actually is still very lightweight and very breathable and a great summer garment. But it is too thick for me to really ever want to wear it underneath a sweater or anything in the winter unless I'm wearing it with a cardigan, and the point is that I'm wearing a little tank top underneath, so it's really not a cold weather garment. I will absolutely knit more of these in the future, either as more gifts or in a lighter, actual true DK, and maybe a bit of a different fiber composition to attempt an actual layering piece, but for now I'm very happy with that one. So that's the first garment that I made. Do recommend. The yarn was very inexpensive because I continue to, but back then I was also really knitting on a budget, and it was very inexpensive. Color selection was good. It's easy to care for, but it's like it's not the most enjoyable yarn to knit with. It's just 100% cotton. The next garment I knit, and the very first sweater I managed to finish and like, is the Cottongrass jumper, or the Cottongrass Sweater, I never remember, by the Petiknitter. And I knit this in, got these sleeves, it's cropped and boxy. The sleeves are a little long on me, but that's okay. But this is knit in knitpicks City Tweed DK in the colors turquoise, jacquard, and I think snowbank. It's whatever the more cool toned white is on their site. There's a more yellowy one, it's not that, it's the cool toned. So this is the first sweater I ever really finished. I made so many mistakes in the course of this sweater. It's honestly kind of hard to remember them all. I know I knit the whole yoke once and then realized it was way too small and then frogged the whole thing and started again. It took me forever to figure out how to do a tubular bind on to start it off in the first place. I think I knit the yoke again, half of it, and then frogged because again it was absolutely just so wildly tight because at the time I was very stressed and the tension in my gauge was just so tight. It was actually kind of mind-blowing now that I think about it. Like, I'm still a tight knitter, but this, in order to get the size, the gauge and the size for a small, this is actually a large that I knit at just such a tight gauge that, like, that was my solution in the end. I kept trying to go up needle sizes and it wasn't really working. So I knit the stitch count for a large and it fits me as a bit of an oversized small. This was inspired by a knitter whose Instagram handle is Lynn the Gray, who knit this sweater in this yarn but in 2 different colors with a similar boxy crop fit. I saw her version on the project page in Ravelry and it really captured my heart and I really wanted to knit it. So I knit a colorwork hat for my boyfriend as practice, and then I did a swatch to practice this motif, and then I cast on with wild abandon. Because I was a very adventurous beginner from the start, I knit a bunch of little hats and ear warmers and things like that for my friends before kind of starting my own garments. But usually I would like knit a hat to practice color work so that I could knit myself a sweater, you know what I mean? And because I had so much time on my hands, I wasn't afraid to frog things because I had time to do it again. And I really enjoyed knitting so much and I was learning so much. And so I actually knit a whole other sweater 3.5, arguably 4 times, and frogged it each and every time because I didn't understand gauge, I didn't understand tension, I didn't understand ease, and I didn't understand that things block out, especially with a significant alpaca content. So I knit this bulky weight sweater out of drops Andes twice, flat and seamed, and then frogged it because it was too tight. And then I tried to knit the Aosta sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl in this yarn that was way too bulky for it, and had to frog the whole body a couple times. I had to frog the sleeve a couple times. I kept using the wrong needle size. It looked really bad. It was too thick. It was so dense. I chose a color that made me look like the Michelin Man crossed with a plucked turkey when it was done. And that sweater is not wearable. The yarn has been frogged so many times that it's really rough and it just doesn't look good on me or anybody else. However, I didn't just jump straight into this is my first sweater. I didn't go straight for a circular yoke colorwork stranded sweater because I'd learned still many things from those other sweaters that I tried and failed to construct. So it wasn't kind of coming out of nowhere that I went for this one, and I still made so many mistakes. There is no short row shaping in the back to raise the neck, and I think if I was to knit this again, I would add that. Because it's really boxy, and it's kind of a deeper yoke, and it's kind of a sharp shoulder, it means that when I raise my arm, the whole sweater kind of moves, and I have to be careful not to flash everybody my midriff, and it also means that I get kind of a breeze around my stomach when it's really cold, and my chest is so warm, perfectly temperature regulated, my arms are really warm, but then the center of my body, my core gets kind of cold because it's so boxy. And even despite that, the little fit things that aren't quite perfect, this is still probably my most worn sweater. I chose colors really intentionally to go with all of my pants, and it does, and I love it. It's so, even with these kind of weird fit things, I still find it incredibly comfortable and really warm and so good for drafty classrooms or cold Canadian winter days. I love it. I recommend it. I just maybe say add some short row shaping in the back and enjoy. So this is by the Petiteknitter, who is a Canadian designer who lives in Nunavut, which is very close to / in the Arctic. Do not confuse her with Petite Knit. I recommend her patterns if you like color work. So that's my second thing. Third is this sweater, which is the Hazy Skies Sweater by ahoneyknits on Instagram, whose first name is Cameron. And this is a test, my first ever test knit. As the designer, it was switching the pattern from a one-size-fits-all garment to a graded with size inclusive garment, and I tested the small. So I knit this in Wool and the Gang Shiny Happy Cotton because they had a big sale last spring, and as my birthday present, my dad bought me Shiny Happy Cotton in different colors. And I really like this pattern. It's fun to knit with all the different texture. You have some seed stitch, some stockinette, some waffle stitch. It has these big balloon sleeves, which I was really into at the time. I got better at mattress seaming, though I'm still not very good at it. And I think this is a really fun pattern. And I wore it a ton last summer. It looked really cute, in my opinion, with my little jean shorts or just jeans. And I really like the color. I think Wool and the Gang Shiny Happy Cotton is a very nice yarn. But this is not really meant for a cotton. It's meant for the petite wool, which is a We Are Knitters yarn that is super popular, but I'm very suspicious of because A, it's just out of my price range, and B, I'm very suspicious of like a chunky roving. I feel like that's not going to hold up very well. I just don't. And I'm not willing to pay to find out just yet. So I knit this in cotton instead, thinking it'd be a nice summer sweater. And I hit gauge. It's just so loose. Like, can you see how loose these stitches are? And so this garment, because it's also kind of really big and boxy, is really heavy but not warm. So it's cute in the summer, and it's like a nice layering piece for when it gets kind of cold, but wind goes right through it. And I'm strongly considering frogging this whole thing and knitting a daisy chain dress by Friday Knits instead to see, depending on whether or not I have enough yarn, because I think that that would be a better use for it, is like a fun summer mini dress, using up some other Wool and the Gang Shiny Happy Cotton that I got from my dad to get some yarn at a stash, and also I've been really eyeing that pattern for a while, so I'm thinking that this might have a better life that way, but we shall see. Okay. Oh, and I did this in the color mauve, which I think is nice. So far the colors are showing up pretty true. There you go. Okay, what did I knit next? Oh, I knit a ranunculus because everybody else was, and I think just like through sheer exposure, I kind of was like, oh, I should knit one. And everyone was talking about how fun they are to knit and how easy and how it's such a great beginner lace pattern. And you can use it with all different types of yarn. And I had a bunch of skeins of this worsted weight Quince & Co. yarn that I got on sale before I knew of the controversies about their business practices. And I wanted to knit this, so I did. So I knit this in a worsted, and I followed the pattern, I think pretty much exactly, used the right needle size. I didn't do as much rib at the bottom because I don't really like that. Here's the gap from where I spit spliced the yarn, and I never show you guys the right spot. From where I spit spliced the yarn, and it just kind of left this big hole because it was on a big needle, so everyone always thinks that's a hole, and I guess it kind of is, but it's not going to unravel. Right on my arm where everybody can see it. This is in Lichen by Quince & Co. and their Lark base. I like it. I wore it a lot over the summer because even though it was 100% wool, it was really good. It's kind of a looser gauge, and with all the eyelets and the lace, it was pretty airy, easy breezy, beautiful cover girl. And I knit it super high-waisted because I kind of got bored of knitting, and I was like, it'll block out, it'll be done. So it's a little cropped, but not too cropped. And this really is a spring summer sweater. It's good in the evenings when it gets a little bit cooler, or in the rain. It's good. I think it'll be really good in the transitional time as we head into spring, when I just want to wear like a light sweater, some jeans. I'm happy with it. And I think it was a good use for this super bright spring color, because otherwise I don't know what I would have knit with this yarn. And since, I've now tried to not just buy yarn without a pattern in mind, but at the time there was a sale and I couldn't resist, and I was just so like knitting. Really the bug had bitten me, and I just wanted to go to knit all the things. I will say the yoke is easy, and it is fun. I was going through a rough time when I was knitting this, and it was the perfect distraction, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was a good time. So I think I finished this at the beginning of June 2020. And it was getting hot. And I thought, okay, Rachel, now you've knit yourself 3 sweaters, even if one is a summer sweater. It is time to start thinking about summer garments and being more practical with what you're knitting, because it's going to be too hot to want to work with wool very soon, and you're not going to be able to wear it. So I knit another Jessie Maed Designs tank top. This is the other free little tank top with the high neck. It is the one that isn't ribbed. Again, I cannot remember the names. And here it is. This one, I think you can tell, it's a little see-through. Again, I knit this in a size small, as recommended for a 34-inch bust. I had so many problems with this that are all my own fault because I chose a not great yarn for it. Okay, I actually maybe want to amend that thought. So I chose a great yarn for wearing. I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels. It is super like silky and lightweight, washes pretty well. I wore this thing to death last summer, and so I shouldn't really cast aspersions on the yarn. However, my gauge was really, really off. So first I knit it a size large, and then I tried it on and it was still somehow huge on me, even though my gauge was off. So then I ripped the whole thing back. I went to like the separation for the front and the back, tried it on and was like, oh, this is huge. So then I did the whole thing over again, knitted a size small, and it's a really slippery yarn because, so I knit this in, I actually have the ball with me because I wanted to remember that I have this yarn and I should use it, get it out of stash. But this is also a hobbii or hobbii yarn, and it's Go Handmade Tencel Bamboo Double, which is, I think, supposed to be a DK, but I think you can tell that it's like a sport kind of DK. It's just a bunch of threads. Like, it's not really like plied, it's just thread together. And it's 40% tencel, 60% bamboo, and it's 50 grams for 130 meters. So not quite the right thing for this project. I didn't really get gauge, but I still knit a size small and it fits. It feels so wonderful against the skin. I recommend it so much for lightweight summer garments if you are okay with hating the yarn while you're knitting it. This is so slippery. It's so splitty. It's so slippery and soft the second like you drop a stitch and it just ladders all the way down, but then you're kind of like tugging them down your needle as you're trying to knit with it. And I had a lot of trouble with the back bind off and trying to make it stretchy. And trying to join yarn was really tough because it's so see-through that like you could really see. And I hadn't learned about the magic knot yet, and the Russian join wouldn't have worked. But despite all of that, I think this is my most worn summer garment by far. I love it. It is so airy and lightweight. Oh, and this is the color Petrol, I think. I love the feel of it so much, and this one I actually do wear as an undergarment in the wintertime under big bulky things because it's so soft and lightweight and gives me that extra layer of warmth without making me feel sweaty. It washes pretty well. It's pilling and looking a little gnarly because I wore it so much, and then I tossed it through the washer and dryer a couple times. I mean, I usually would take it out of the dryer after like 10 minutes, but still, haven't been super careful with care. It's pilling only a little bit, but I'm worried that the yarn is going to start fraying or something. So I highly recommend this pattern and this yarn for something light and silky, but it is murder to work with. However, again, it's not very expensive at all. And tencel and bamboo are two very sustainable fibers if you get them from the right people. So that's nice. Next from there, I knit another summer top. I knit the Cinch Me crop top so her username on Instagram is Camel Knits. And I'm pretty sure her name is Camille Mikolas. Camille Mikolas? Maybe it's Camilla. I think it's Camille Mikolas. But definitely Camel Knits on Instagram. And this I used with more of the shiny happy cotton from my dad. Oh, so the sweater previously, it took I think like 4 or 5 balls, but I barely cracked into the last one. And then this one is 3, but I barely cracked into the third one. If you watch some of my earliest episodes, you will have heard me talk about this. I knit most of it, and I was really playing yarn chicken because I only had 2 from the order from my dad, and then I ran out before doing the second sleeve and then cinching it up in the middle. And then I ordered another 3rd ball, and I have most of that left. This is a really, really enjoyable pattern. It works up really quickly because you're using 5mm needles, and it's so little. It's a little crop top. And you can do it without sleeves. There's both a tank top and like a little t-shirt option. And you knit it flat, but in one piece. And then you seam up the middle, and then you have this little cinch detail. I keep meaning to go back and redo the sewing on that cinch because, as you can see, it looks kind of bad. I was kind of lazy and I moved too fast, and I think I need to just sew in more. I also reinforced the neckline with crochet because it was kind of rolling in and a little bit too risque. I think it's because I'm short and therefore have a proportionately short torso, so I did the pattern exactly as recommended, except I did the sleeves a little bit less cap sleeve, a little bit shorter. But because I knit it as recommended in the chest, and then I just kind of went a little bit lower down on me, and it was kind of an aggressive V, and that's fine for like sitting in the park with my friends, but I didn't feel comfortable wearing it to campus or to class. So I reinforced the neckline with crochet to keep the stockinette from rolling, and that made it better. I did a little I-cord tie, and I might go back and lengthen this. I don't know. It's so easy to say we want to change things, and then so often we just never do it. But I really enjoyed this project. It was super fast and really, really, I think it was actually fast because I really liked it. It was my first time doing this kind of construction. I liked the short row sleeves. I liked knitting the little I-cord strap. I liked the back panel, then you pick up stitches for the shoulders and knit down kind of construction. And I loved the finished object so much. I was waiting for it to come out. I was watching the testers, submit their photos, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna knit it. And then I did, and I enjoyed it, and I wore this a lot. I thought it was super cute and super wearable, and it was nice and easy breezy for summer and a good transitional piece. So, the Cinch Me Close crop top by Camel Knits, highly recommend. If you want something easy breezy, just be mindful of how deep the neckline goes, is my recommendation. Because I think you can see that's kind of scooping down there. So keep that in mind if you're gonna knit it. And I'm going to knit another one for my friend. That's one of my March-April projects. She ordered the yarn and I'm going to knit it. It's going to be this like electric blue and orange, very neon, such saturated color. It's gonna be two-tone and it'll be cute. I've been meaning to do that for her for a while, but we ordered the yarn at the end of summer, and she said there was really no rush, just for next summer, so that'll happen soon. And after that, I wanted to knit another sweater. I just did. I love having sweaters, but I really love knitting them, and I wanted another big project on my needles. It had been hot for a while and I was dreaming of autumn. And I had a sweater quantity of this and I knit the crop top in a size small. The Cinch Me one, the green one that I just showed you. And so that pattern I think is graded from a 2XS to a 4 or a 5XL, but it's only been tested up to a 2 or a 3XL last time I checked, which was many months ago. So if you are a 3XL or 4XL or 5XL, I think the pattern is still available. If you just contact the designer and say, hey, I would love to knit it, and I'm in one of those sizes, I think she said that she'd be happy to give it to you for free with the knowledge that it might have some math or fit errors, and then maybe just report those back to the designer so she can adjust it if necessary. So that's what I think is the situation on that, but I haven't checked since last autumn. But next I knit yet another Jessie Maed design, and this is her Cozy Classic Raglan, which you've seen on the podcast before. Again, it's kind of crumpled because it's been on my floor waiting for this podcast. And I knit this in the Fiber Company Acadia base, which is the bougiest yarn. That might not actually be true anymore, but it was at the time and for many months and for most of my knitting career and crochet career, the bougiest yarn I had, which is their Acadia base in the color Cormorant. And I always lament that trying to film really does not do this color justice. It looks a little washed out here. It definitely is a gray, but in person it's a lot darker and richer. And in some color, some light, it looks almost purple. In some light, it looks a little bit blue. In some light, it's this like deep dark slate color. I think it's stunning, and I'm very happy that I knit this. I got the yarn on a Boxing Day sale from Knitomatic. It was like 30% off, and I didn't realize how bougie it was because I didn't pay attention to the fact that it was a 50 gram skein, not a 100 gram skein. And I really wanted a basic wear everyday neutral to get the most out of that yarn, and also because this color is such a lovely neutral for me. So I did the Cozy Classic Raglan. I modified it to have a double folded neckline, which I think was really nice. I did the increases wrong, so there's more texture along the raglan line than there should be, but I'm very happy with that. When I realized that I was making the mistake, I just kind of kept going. And I'm thinking in hindsight, so this is, I think, a negative ease or maybe just a 0 ease garment on me, and it's 3/4 length sleeves, and it is quite cropped. None of that was intentional. Well, no, the quarter length sleeves was. But I just didn't gauge swatch before I cast on, and I figured it would be okay because this is kind of a DK, but it's kind of a thin DK in my opinion. I think it might arguably be just like a light DK or a little bit of a sport weight. And it means that my garment is pretty tight when it's meant to have a little bit of positive ease. And I also just didn't knit it long enough because I got bored and lazy, and I just wanted it, and I thought it would stretch out with blocking, and it did, but only a little bit. So this is very likely my most worn sweater. The Cottongrass gives it a run for its money, but I think that's because I finished the Cottongrass like 4 or 5 months earlier when it was still cold enough to wear it. And that's just because this color is so wearable, the silhouette is so wearable. And again, I chose something that I very thoughtfully, with the knowledge that it would go with most of my pants and skirts. And that decision paid off. I really still like the fit of it as a more fitted garment and cropped because all my pants are high-waisted, so it still ends at a good line for me. It is not like one of those super heavy, really warm sweaters, but it's great for the autumn, and I find it to be somewhat breathable. But I think that because this yarn is a little bit thinner, means that my gauge is a lot tighter, and that's why it's so tight. Either way, I don't mind because, okay, I keep saying that it's so tight, but it isn't like tight on me, it's just fitted, and it was supposed to have positive ease instead. I also never wove in a bunch of my ends, so I just tuck them in when I wear them. That's my dirty secret. I will say, however, this was a very pricey yarn. It was what I thought was going to be my big splurge, and maybe you've noticed the fact that I'm picking off little pills the whole time, because it has pilled like nobody's business. It has pilled more than any other sweater I own, and maybe that's because of the gauge, but I think it's just the fiber content. I got my sweater depiller, my gleaner, for general maintenance of knits reasons, but like the impetus was this sweater because it got so pilled that I felt self-conscious wearing it out, and I just stopped for a couple months. And so I'm still picking off all these little pills after a somewhat rigorous gleaning session. So yeah, first time I alternated skeins. Didn't do a great job, but I was proud of myself for learning. See, just so many pills. Grumpy. I really adore the color selection of this yarn, but I just don't trust that it's going to wear super well. But I did have a lot left over, so I knit myself a matching hat that I knit a little bit too tight, but I still wear a lot because I wore it when I still had, sorry, I knit it when I had very little hair, and I didn't account for how my very poofy curly hair growing in again would affect how tight the hat was. So oops, bit of a miscalculation there, but that's life, that's knitting. It's still comfortable, it's still warm, I still like it. So that is my Cozy Classic Raglan, knit in a size S in Acadia. I am a big fan. If I was to knit it again, I would choose a different yarn, even though I love, because I already have this version and I love it, and I would make it a little bit longer. Oh, I've worn this sweater so much that I felted it at the armpits because on more than one occasion I was running late to class, and I mean actually running, and wearing a jean jacket because that was the appropriate for the weather, and sweat and running meant that I felted the armpit. Noticed that the other day. That's pretty embarrassing. But just to give you an idea of how worn this sweater is, and I have no intention to stop anytime soon. Love it. Something else about the Cozy Classic Raglan is that that was my first time doing German short rows, and my first successful raglan sweater, and I knit it in the summer in part because I wanted to use that yarn and get it out of stash and have it as a garment, because it was very special yarn to me, and I wanted a nice neutral gray sweater. But also I wanted to learn how to do those techniques because they're very important techniques, and I was tired of being scared of them. But also, I had at that point seen the Peteknitters Fortune Sweater, which is a little bit more of an advanced level construction, not because anything in it is particularly difficult, just because you have to keep track of a bunch of different things happening at the same time, such as German short row shaping in the back at the same time as placing the beginning of the lace pattern at the same time as doing raglan increases. And I knew that I needed to be more adept at raglan increases and German short rows in order to, and a folded neckline in order to knit that pattern, which I decided I was going to do. And so the Cozy Classic Raglan was a great way to learn and practice and level up my skills as I waited to be ready to cast on the Fortune Sweater and also buy the yarn for it, because I hadn't at that point. So that was the Cozy Classic Raglan, and that approach to knitting is something that I, especially in my first year, I did a lot, and I still try and do now, is I pick projects based on I want the finished object and it would be practical for me, it would be wearable and I would enjoy it, and that I would also enjoy the process and the project a lot because I enjoy the practice of knitting immensely, but also because there are techniques in that project that I wanted to learn, sometimes because I had another project in mind, like the Fortune Sweater and the Cozy Classic Raglan, or my boyfriend's colorwork hat and my Cottongrass jumper, and sometimes just because I wanted to learn how to do lace, for example, like with the Ranunculus, and understand what that means a little bit more and get more comfortable with texture, or learning how to do a tubular bind on, oh my goodness, cast on and bind off, because that seems to be a very popular technique and I didn't want to be intimidated by it. And because it was a really good way to keep my mind active and learning new things and having that sense of accomplishment and a challenge, and to keep my hands occupied. So that is often the approach I would take with selecting projects. There are a bunch of different things that go into it, but learning new techniques was very much a priority and kind of still continues to. It's just now I know a lot of the stuff that I like. So from there, I also saw the Augustines number, oh my goodness, is this number 10 or number 11? I can never remember. The dress, the tunic dress. And Wool Warehouse had a major sale on the yarn that I wanted to knit it in. So I bought that, and I knit the Augustines number 10 or 11, the dress. And it's too big to fit in frame, but here is parts of it. It has a saddle shoulder construction, which is my first time doing that, and so far I think my only. It has these big puffy sleeves, and then this cinched waist that I put elastic into, and then I-cord bind-offs and edgings. I knit this in Drops Wish in the color Bordeaux in the second size, but I think I could have sized down and still been happy. This was a mammoth project. It's knit on super bulky needles and super bulky yarn, but just the sheer amount of stitches means that it was a slog to get through, because it's after a certain point, after the fun saddle shoulder and sleeve separation and all such things are done. And I did find the construction of the top to be very engaging and very fun, but once that's done, it's just stuck in the round for what felt like about 27 years. So, took a lot out of me. And I talked about this at length in a previous video where I'm wearing it, but this kind of sapped my knitting mojo, but also for a few days / weeks. And it was a very valuable lesson on the importance of the finishing of projects and not skipping blocking and some of the things that the designer recommends. So for example, doing the I-cord neckline, the next smaller size, one size down, and doing the elasticated waist and blocking changed the way that I felt about this garment immensely, and changed it from something that kind of upset me that I wasted all this time and energy on only to hate, into a garment that I love and wore a lot until it was too cold to, and I'm actually wondering if I maybe wear this out today to study with my friends in a cafe. And so yeah, I love this. It's huge and it's kind of a pain to store, but it's warm. I really enjoyed the top part and I enjoyed the final object quite a bit. I also am very happy that I chose a blown yarn for this, because it's quite a heavy garment in construction, but the yarn itself is rather lightweight, which kind of helps balance out the weight of a super bulky project. So go past Rachel. That was a very smart decision. That took me into, oh no, I skipped one, because I finished that right after Halloween. So in September and October, I don't know if that's exactly right. The details will be on my Ravelry sometimes, or in previous podcasts, because I started podcasting in July, and so a bunch of these projects, you'll start seeing them in thumbnails and in the video, and you'll have a better idea of more details on these projects if you wanted them, but also of timeline. This is a project I was knitting in September and October, but mostly September. I just put off the finishing of it until October for reasons that are not immediately clear to me. I'm just lazy sometimes. This is the One That I Want crop by Lily Kate Makes, also known as Lily Kate France. It's very popular and a very impressive designer. I like a lot of her work and plan to knit more of it. And this is really cool to me. I knit this in KnitPicks Comfy Worsted in their Hollyberry colorway. I think it took me just over 2 balls, but I don't remember. The information will be in the relevant podcast episode, which will be sometime in the autumn. And it is knit in a very interesting manner. So you knit it flat from side to side. You cast on, so this back is seamed, and that's the cast on edge seamed with the bind off edge. And so you start knitting it back and forth in garter, and then it's shaped, as you can see, with these bust darts that are short rows. Then you seam the whole thing together and add these crochet scallop details, which was a fun way to bring in crochet to my knitting project. And Bob's your uncle. I knit this in a size 3. And I really, really like it. I did mess up one of the sides, the decreases or the increases. Like one of the armpits goes down a lot more quickly than the other. No one but me is going to notice. It's really comfy. This is a cotton acrylic blend. And I went with a worsted because I'm a tight knitter, and the designer recommended a really plump DK, and I knew that I wasn't going to get gauge with the DK, and so I went with a worsted, and it was pretty bang on. Really happy with it. It's pretty easy to customize and add length if you want, and really clear and engaging pattern. Super interesting construction. One of the only ways I like garter is when it's this fun vertical stripe, and it's super squishy and fun to wear, and I would really like to knit another one in like a springtime color. And I wore this out for drinks once with a little flannel over top, and I felt very cute. Very very autumnal, casual girl cute. So, yeah, from there I knit the Augustines dress. And in November, which is about where we are now in this timeline, in the chronology, I was knitting the Fortune Sweater, which is still a whip, and a bunch of gift knits. And then I applied for and was accepted into 2 test knits, which was very exciting for me. And then furiously knit 2 sweaters at the same time as knitting a bunch of different gifts and also writing my finals. So the first of those is the Folly Dolly Jumper by Yelly's Wonders, who also has a podcast here on YouTube that I remember I will link down below, but it's also called Yelly's Wonders, I think, but that's her Instagram handle. Her name as a designer is Aniela Pickles. And this is what it looks like. It has these really lovely scallop edging. It's a bottom up in the round sweater. You join at the underarms and you graft them. And you have an I-cord bind off. And I knit the size 3, which I technically sized up for a little bit more positive ease. And I knit it in Drops Air and Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk. It is super lightweight. It is so much fun to knit. It's really, really fast because it's technically a bulky gauge or a chunky gauge. And it is warm but lightweight, which is really nice. I love the stitch pattern. It's very fun. And I feel like I could maybe wear this to the office with a nice slim black trouser if I'm ever in an office again, because it does kind of feel like a blouse. I do recommend it. The pattern came out a couple weeks ago? No, about a month ago. And it's graded for a variety of sizes. And it has 4 different sleeve options. Neckline shaping, I was very impressed by how well the pattern came together. There were only a couple issues in testing that Aniela cleaned up very quickly. So that's the Folly Dolly, which I loved, wear a lot, and recommend. At this point, I'm sure you guys are now able to see what kind of colors I like. And my very last garment that I finished in my very first year of knitting for myself is the Crescendo blouse by the Knit Pearl Girl, which looks like this. And I knit this in knitpicks Aloft, which is the mohair in the color Kenai, and Cascade Heritage Solids sock yarn in the color Como. I love it. I wear it a lot. I would like to knit another one in a neutral. Or maybe in a neutral. But with long sleeves, not these really lovely puff sleeves. And this has unfortunately made me realize I do like mohair, which sucks for me because I would like to be a budget-friendly knitter. But I like it. I like mohair. That one I've also talked about at length in the past 2 or 3 episodes. It was also a test knit. It's very well done. Been graded, I think, from an extra small to a 5XL. I knit the size small. I think my gauge was a little bit loose for maybe the first time in my whole life. and it's a little bit looser on me than I think is the recommended ease, but I still really love it. I wear it a lot, feel very fancy in it, and it's very warm and very temperature regulating, which I really appreciate. And I think that's it. That's the sweater / tank top wrap up, my friends. I really hope you enjoyed. Some concluding or summary thoughts is looking at my pile, which I'll grab for you just now. As you can see, we got a lot, you know, like look at these bad boys. I love them. However, I think some summary thoughts, some concluding takeaways. You can kind of tell what my colors are, can't you? I like green. I like turquoisey colors. I like my reds, and I like purpley grays. And I have no regrets. I think that's something that is a strength of mine. Well, a weakness and a strength. In a lot of situations, I overanalyze, overthink things. But it also means that I did my best to choose patterns and yarns very thoughtfully and intentionally, so that there are some things that I will love, hopefully for a long time, but definitely love and wear a lot right now. And go with a lot of other things in my wardrobe, which is very important to me. But I really went for colors. I didn't think I realized that until I had them all in front of me and not mixed in my wardrobe or my closet with a whole bunch of other neutral pieces. Some colors I didn't really choose. This is because the yarn was accidentally sent to me and I chose a solid color to match it. But this bad boy I chose, this one, the greens, these I chose. I didn't really pick a lot of neutrals. And I mean, at this point, arguably green is a neutral to me. Blue is almost a neutral, but that has definitely already been a priority for my second year of knitting, but will continue to be, is not switching, but definitely prioritizing neutrals. Neutral colors, neutral yarn textures, and really wearable designs, which is always my priority. All of these things I consider to be very wearable, and I do certainly wear them a lot. But the things that I have coming up are more like this, sneak peek for the next podcast, or more grays, some white, with definitely still a lot of color, but more pops of color, and maybe some undergarments or some colorwork socks, which I've been finding is a great outlet for my color cravings. And then I genuinely am really just craving neutrals. I want a beige sweater. I want a black cardigan. I want a nice white flowy sweater that I will stain with coffee immediately and then come back to you guys crying because we all knew it was going to happen and I did it anyway. And so that is a look at my first year of knitting. And here are some thoughts those were some thoughts for my choices in my year ahead. I really want to thank you for being here. Thank you so much if you've subscribed to my channel and helped me hit this 1,000 subscriber milestone. That is wild to me. I appreciate you for sticking out to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, maybe discovered a new pattern or a new yarn. And I'll see you in the next one, which will be a spicy podcast update. All right, I hope you are happy. I hope you are healthy. I hope you are safe. I know that it's been incredibly grim for what feels like forever, and like the hits just keep on coming to definitely specific groups and certain people. Ukraine being the newest and most recent worst of people and places hit by just awful, awful things. But I hope that this provided you a break, some respite from just the onslaught of awful. And happy knitting. Care about you. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.